We've been measuring job sites wrong for decades. Honestly, it's crazy because it's costing us time, money, and the big one, trust. Like that thing you can't invoice for, but if you lose it, you're basically working in the dark. I grew up with concrete, dirt, sawdust in my hair, not metaphorically, actually. My dad ran a concrete company. My uncles ran construction, landscaping, so from the moment I could walk, I was on farms, then building sites, Ireland, the UK, later America, digging trenches, pouring slabs, dangling off rooftops like some kind of, I don't know, cut price stunt double or something like that. It was graft, it was glorious, it was, I don't know, the most real thing I've ever known. But my dad taught me the quiet part of the job, which is weird because the man practically shouted everything he said over cement mixers, plant machinery, chainsaws, that kind of thing. But he took me one side and looked at me and said, "Barry, you can move 100 tons of muck before breakfast, before noon, whatever. But if your first measurement is wrong, then everything else just falls apart." And he wasn't wrong. People look at the magazine cover, right? The architectural steel, the fancy fire pits, but all that pretty stuff, it's just built on cold, hard numbers. You get the tape out wrong, the concrete doesn't care how hard you sweat. The landscaping doesn't go, "Oh, look at him, bless. You know, he tried his best." It doesn't, and it didn't work like that. And that is the difference between making a profit and working for free, which by the way is just volunteering with extra steps and, I don't know, a back pain. I mean, look at this site. It's gorgeous brickwork there behind me, if you can see it, L-shape extension, all that. But here's the thing, and I promise I'll stop ranting in a second, but not a single corner on this property is a true 90 degrees. That crew about 80 years ago weren't using lasers. They were using a spirit level and, I don't know, a prayer. So if you try and square off a patio with just a tape measure, your cuts will end up like a dog's dinner on your drainage. Man, that's going to be a nightmare. The land and the building dictate the job. You just have to map their reality, and I guess that's kind of what I'm doing right now. We'll get there. You get the architect's plans right, and on paper, everything is perfect, 90-degree angle, beautiful, crisp, folded neatly. Then you turn up on site and the boundary line, it's zigzagging and absolutely nothing is square. And then there's massive oaks or pines that apparently nobody thought to tell you about. And you're just standing there going, right, okay, well, the paper's the dream, but out here is reality. Oh, right, I still love it despite all that. Now you've got root systems, dips, and fence posts that are just suggestions at these points. And come over here, these brambles back in there, nightmare to deal with. But they tell me here that the soil is incredibly acidic. And you might be thinking, "Barry, why do I need to know about acidic soil at 9 AM on a Tuesday?" And honestly, okay, right, fair point, but this massive pine trees, the roots, they go out at least, I don't know, this far and further, and we can't dig a trench there without killing a beautiful 50-year-old tree. And I'm not being the man who murdered a pine or an oak for a soakaway, so we have to work around it, which is where my high-tech setup from back in the day comes in. I remember, right, this one job, early days, freezing cold. My entire survey kit was a 5-pound neon string ball and pure blind optimism, which, to be fair, has gotten me through a lot of situations in life. So I'm there trying to carry, you know, a straight line around this enormous tree, can't pull a string through a trunk, tried, actually ended up in knots. But you can't shoot a laser through a jungle of wet brambles either. So I spend over an hour doing high school trigonometry in the mud, knocking in offset pins, absolutely sure that I'm a genius. Finally get it set. The client comes out wanting to chat about his grand design, the sunken fire pit, the full Pinterest dream. And I'm pulling these straight, string really tight just to check the tension. And the pin gives way. The string snapped back like a wet rubber band and whipped a solid clump of freezing mud straight into my eye. How do you recover from that? Anyways, half blind, I marked out the trench. The next day the digger turns up and my expert muddy math was off by a full 2 feet. We nearly took out his pristine garden bed. He wasn't thrilled. I was physically fighting the land just to get a basic measurement, and the land won spectacularly. And do you know what? That makes me think, and I know I do this, I look back, bear with me, think about how much the world has changed in the last, I don't know what, 20 years. We have electric trucks, laser guided excavators, cars that drive themselves now. And just the other day, we literally slingshot humans around the far side of the moon. But you know what? You go to 90% of job sites and there are still lads pulling a flimsy bit of string across 100 feet of mud, guessing the drop. Like, why are we so stubborn? Why do we romanticize doing things the hard way? I might be a dung and boots farmer boy from the edge of Ireland, but I say, let the tech do the talking. Anyway, the tree is still there. It's fine. I'm not bitter. I'm just shaped by the experience. Look at this battlefield of brambles, debris, obstacles. You know, when you're young, you don't mind crawling through wet grass for 2 hours, double checking your tape, but eventually this industry collects its debts. Your knees start talking, your back tightens up. And I don't know about you, but I now have full-blown conversations with my spine every morning. So if I can map out every weird angle of this site, including this nightmare tree line here behind me, just by taking a stroll with my coffee and clever tech, I'm going to do it. Save the graft for the heavy lifting. And I know that sounds like an infomercial, but I mean it from a place of deep, creaky self-preservation. And actually, funny timing on that, because I was out in Brenham, Texas, not long ago, and there was this young lad, 23, fresh boots, full of it, but the good kind of full of it. And he pulls me aside and goes, "Barry, what's the one thing?" Just like that. What's the one thing? Well, I thought about it for a second, and it wasn't measurements. It wasn't even the tech. It was the biggest mistake young lads make, which isn't bad measurements. It's bad communication. Like, take this courtyard and see that behind me. A client will look at that and say, "I want the whole thing paved." Sounds brilliant, but it's trapped on 3 sides by the building. So if you don't map the slopes perfectly, all the rainwater drains straight into their living room. And then you're the guy who turned their open plan kitchen into an indoor pond, not the vibe. So your job becomes translating their dream into reality. You have to explain why it needs proper drainage, you have to price it fairly, but profitably. And if they fight you over the cost of doing it right, even before you've broken ground, walk away. Just walk. That's a headache you don't need, and the dirt hasn't changed. The old bricks haven't changed. The craft is exactly the same. What's changed is how smart we can be before we pick up a shovel. Get your groundwork right, get your head right, and the rest is just putting one boot after the other right. Okay, that's enough wisdom. I should be wearing gloves. I need to go find them.